It's really important to understand it starts when you're younger. Don't fool yourself in thinking that you're okay. I'm great, great, great now. Yeah, you're okay because you're young. But this thing gradually gets to the point, your diseases, they develop through your life. And that's why it's important. You're never too young to start thinking about your health.
Welcome back to another episode of Mind Over MS. Today, I'm joined by Michael Dorfman, an author and health and nutrition life coach, and a research advocate on wellness and aging in what he calls the fifth stage of life. And I think that this topic is going to resonate deeply for everybody healing with chronic illness because the same things that are going to keep you living well into your fifth phase of life are the same things that probably heal you currently. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dana. Pleasure to be here.
Reading your bio, I think one of the things that really struck me is like you're like the OG in the longevity realm because, going all the way back from when you first started making this a topic for yourself, that was well before it was trendy and everybody was talking about longevity and all these biohacking tools. So, what really led you into this field of study?
Well, first of all, I was 84 years old as of January of this year. So I'm living the longevity dream of thriving, having vitality, energy, and really doing well. I don't have a chronic disease. So anyway, so it started, I think the change in my life started in 1976. Before that, I was pretty much completely on the standard American diet of a lot of animal products, some fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts. But I was much bigger than I am now. I was pretty stocky at that time, and but that's what I was doing to that phase of my life. In 1976, both my wife and I we made a change to a vegetarian diet. And it wasn't so much at that time because of health. It was more, I became interested in Eastern philosophy and religion. And on that side of the world, there are a lot of vegetarians. So I decided that, well, why not go along with it when in Rome? So I became a vegetarian. My wife did too. And I was doing pretty well, except I was getting sick every year, once or twice a year for a couple of weeks each time. Not serious illness, more like flu symptoms, fever, sore throat, congestion, headaches. And it was like clockwork. Every year that would happen. And I didn't know why that was happening. So the years were passing. And then finally, my brother, he was celebrated his 90th birthday last year. He was following plant-based lifestyle, and he mentioned to me and he recommended that why don't I try to giving up the dairy? Because you're vegetarian, you're giving up the meat, but the dairy is another part of it, the animal product. So why don't you give up the dairy? But I told him, I said, forget it. I can't do that. I love my pizza. I love cheese, like many people do. And many people find it more difficult even giving up dairy foods than giving up meat. So I said, no, no, thank you. And I kept on doing it, kept on doing it. And years had passed. And finally, my brother told me about this book by Dr. T. Colin Campbell called The China Study, which it's called a Chinese study because T. Colin Campbell, who is also in his 90s now, he was contracted at that time, him and his team, to work with the Chinese teams to find out about cancer in China. Where are the most cancers in China? What are the differences in lifestyle? And Xiao Enlai, who I believe was the leader at that time of China, he actually died from cancer, but he wanted this study done. So this was a 20-year study about cancer, and I read it, and there was a lot of emphasis on plant-based nutrition in the rural areas of China, in the community. I think the study was done in over 160 communities in China, and they found out this was a major difference between people who were living in the cities with the more cancer problems, and so I decided that, well, okay, I'll do that. I was really impacted by his book, The China Study. So I made the change. This was almost 18 years ago, and I haven't looked back. It's been great. Haven't had that problem, the yearly problem, and so that was very important for me for my own personal health. But there was something that happened years ago. I think it was in about 12 years ago. Well, anyway, a friend of my wife and myself, Beatrice, she was living in Cozumel, which is in the Mexican Caribbean. It's an island off of Mexico. Uh, I might as well mention it also. I've been living in Mexico for 53 years. So originally I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if you can hear my accent or whatever, but so anyway, so Beatrice had a heart attack, and she went to the hospital. She was accompanied by my wife and her son, and they did the quadruple bypass heart surgery. Sent her home. It was a successful surgery. A year later, she started complaining about pain in her arm. And that's one of the symptoms of possible cardiovascular disease. They called her back to the hospital and checked her out, and they decided they wanted to put a stent in, which is very common after people go through heart surgery, a year or 2 years after. And some people go get stents put in year after year. So they tried to put a stent in, but it was not successful. And the reason was because the vein that replaced the original artery was too narrow. They couldn't do anything. They told her that. They couldn't do anything. They sent her home. And what they didn't tell her was that they told my wife and her son was she had about 6 months to live. So they sent her home, and they told her not to exert herself, not to do too much exercise, take it easy, not to climb stairs. So anyway, they sent her home, and I heard about this, and I heard about the 6 months that they didn't tell her, fortunately. They told my wife and her son. So I was reading at that time a lot of books, doing a lot of research on doctors that were having positive results with plant-based diet to treat cardiovascular disease. And one of the doctors, Caldwell Esselstyn, who was the chief of staff and top surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the top heart hospitals in the United States, maybe even in the world. So he was getting upset every year, this Dr. Esselstyn, who's also in his 90s and very active, because with all the technology, with all the training that the students go through to become heart specialists, why is heart disease getting more and more popular or more and more frequent as year after year? Why haven't we found out what we should do to either prevent or reverse heart disease? So anyway, Dr. Esselstyn was taking a lot of the patients or the heart patients that were in very severe conditions, bad conditions. Some couldn't even walk to one side of the room to the other without having to sit down. So he was taking these patients and he put them on these strict diets, plant-based diets. And over the years were passing, and he was having a 95% success results rating through his plant-based nutrition. So he wrote the book, the Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, which I had read, and it actually at the top of the book, it just has a little statement which says the book that changed Bill Clinton's life, because Bill Clinton had gone through heart surgery and decided he had stents put in, I think once or twice, and he decided he wanted to try something else, and he read the book and he became plant based. I'm not sure if he how much plant based he is now, but he's doing pretty well. But anyway, I gave the book to Beatrice and she read it and she decided to make the change. And instead of the 6 months, she lived almost 10 years. And for me, that was, life changing. And I decided from that moment on that I really wanted to tell people about this. And, and then and I was, I got into the whole studying for, well, why is this not the go-to nutrition for people who have gone through heart surgery if this had happened with my friend? And then I find out, that doctors aren't trained in nutrition. They're not trained in lifestyle when they go through, to become a heart specialist. So this was, this is something that was very important for me. And I started getting into other diseases, which also are helped through diet and also lifestyle practices. So this is what I did. And I wrote my first book in 2019, which was The Thriving Vegan. And now I have my next book just came out.
So there's so many directions I could go from there because you touched on a lot of really interesting and really valid points. But I think the one I want to go to first is it's amazing to me that you really made such a drastic change for yourself when your back was not hard up against the wall. Because for a lot of us, we talk about this in neurolinguistic programming as away from or towards. And for a lot of people, they only move when they're motivated because the pain is so severe. You have to, like your friend you're talking about with the heart attack. And this is life or death now. But for yourself, you're in a place where you're doing pretty good. You might have a couple things going on, some colds, a little bit, but you're doing pretty good even on the standard American diet. You have no major health issues yet, but you still are so moving towards this optimizing and being better that you're still so motivated. And I wish that more people in society lived in your mind frame where they were doing something to prevent getting very sick instead of having to come back from being very sick. Because for most of us and the people watching here that have already developed MS, you go to the doctor and like the point you've made, they don't say anything about diet. I actually brought diet up to the doctor and they said that's ridiculous. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's genetic. It's you rolled bad luck of the dice and go home. 10 years are going to be in a wheelchair. And I didn't accept that. So I was like, well, I'm going to do something. And with the MS group of people, a lot of us that are going to be listening to this podcast are people who have already kind of decided they're not doing the conventional route. They're going to look into other things, much like you're working on. So we all follow Terry Wall's protocol, a lot of us, which is like an anti-inflammatory diet for autoimmune diseases. But amazing to me that even her as a doctor, she was a neurologist before her own diagnosis, didn't do diet, recommended only prescription drugs to people, poor outlook, poor prognosis, until she was sick. And as soon as she was now the patient herself, realizing, okay, so this isn't enough. We need to do something more, and realized her own lack of training in nutrition, in alternative things, and then took her analytical doctor trained mind and put it towards now finding solutions. And so I think good for you for being towards this pursuit and for making this a mission now to help other people and bring the information forward. Because one of the other things I was listening to when you're saying how like in the 70s, thinking about food production, our toxic environment, the load even on the standard American diet, because it obviously still wasn't good then. But when you look at the diet now and what kids are facing now with glyphosate and with the spraying in the sky and with the water and with how many things, the EMF even and the exposure of so many things in the environment, the food sources from monocropping and spraying, they're so depleted of nutrients that even if you're eating plant-based now, a lot of times you're still not even getting enough. And we look at that and say, it makes sense to me then. Why is autism higher and Alzheimer's and autoimmune and cancer? Everything rises at the same time as we industrialize. And I wonder in that China study you mentioned, if going between the urban and the rural areas, if there was any look at not just the difference in the food, but also in lifestyle too, right? Because people living in city places tend to have more fast food, maybe, or more a fast-paced environment, more stress, more noise pollution. That it's this compounding factor of the food and all of these other things in their environment.
Yeah, it's the uh, the amount of I think one of the big change the ultra processed foods today don't compare at all because I grew up in the 50s, 1950s. I was born in 42, and I know that we what we're eating now, it's way beyond as far as negatively of what we ate then. My father was a butcher. My brother was a butcher. Had cousins were, so we ate a lot of meat and dairy. But a lot of the people. My mother lived till she was almost 100, and she wasn't. She ate. She didn't eat too much, but but they didn't eat like we ate today. I remember a quote. I don't know who said it, but don't eat anything that your grandma wouldn't recognize as food. So it wasn't as bad. So now it's terrible. And exactly what you're saying. I mean, type 2 diabetes, the obesity, the high blood, it's unbelievable. We're going in the wrong direction. And that's why even our children today, people who are children today are not expected to live as long as their parents. It's like going in reverse. Would never happened before because of all the things you're saying. So uh yeah, so it's absolutely true what you're saying. And I wanted to bring one thing up, which I was just remembering, that I've always even though I made the change in 76, I've always been I've always doubted. I got involved in when during the Vietnam War. I was involved in protesting, well, against the government, what was happening then. And this started me off on. From then, it was like I want to doubt everything. So I've been going through. I've gone through different illnesses. I had tuberculosis when I was 70 in 1970. I've gone through vascular necrosis of the femur. Not too long ago, a few years ago, sleep apnea. I've gone through arrhythmias, heavy duty arrhythmias. But I've always, because of this, I just don't trust, the established thing. And I can go and I even explain how I've gone through, how I've dealt with these things. And it was always alternative. Like, for example, I had when I was in my 40s, and it was the vascular necrosis of because I used to walk a lot of exercise, sports. I was involved in that. So I would walk a lot every day, sometimes, doing, running. Anyway, I was experiencing a pain on my right side, and I just kept on doing it until finally I couldn't walk anymore. I was in bed for like 2 weeks. I went to get an MRI, and doctor walks out and he says, "You need a new femur." Of course, the other one, the necrosis, vascular necrosis, means the capillaries or the blood vessels on the head of the femur were they were gone. Because I didn't let up, walking or running, jogging. So and I walked out. I was in my 40s. I said, "Wait, are you kidding me?" So I'm always looking for alternatives. So I go to my naturopath doctor, and she says to me, there's another possible option. Just keep walking on it. Keep walking on it every single day. And there's a chance that a callus will form that will replace the dead capillaries in vessels. And that was over 40 years ago. And I've never had a problem with that. So it's like, and that was one thing. Then the sleep apnea, I had something put in my mouth to make sure that, because my wife discovered, how come you're not breathing? You go for like 20 seconds without taking a breath. And I never even heard of sleep apnea. So then I got scared. Twice I went to the emergency room in the hospital, and So nobody knew. I went to heart specialist. They didn't tell me it was. I find out I got sleep apnea. So I went to this dentist who was expert in sleep apnea, and she made this mouthpiece for me to keep my tongue up so it won't be on top of where you breathe, the epiglottis. So I did that for a year. And then I'm reading this book called The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick
Yeah, I
McCune.
have that one too.
And
Yeah.
he's saying about sleep apnea, you can, and you have to breathe through your nose. And I said, if you do this, that's what his treatment was. Start breathing through your nose. And so I put tape on my mouth. I was going to sleep with tape, so I don't, breathe through my mouth. She said, in 3 months, you should have the new habit. And that's what happened. So I don't have sleep. So this is what was happening to me. And I was going through it. And every time it happened, it was like another star for alternative treatment. And that's the way it is for me today. So that's where I go. I'm going in that direction, and I'm learning new things constantly of like, because now I have a new mindset, which is I'm thriving in the 80s. I don't even pay attention to my years because, I'm 84. But it's just, I've taken on a new identity, and that's what I'm trying to help people see. It's so important, the mindset, because if you have a mindset that you're at 70s, you're going to get a chronic disease, everything's downhill, there's nothing to look forward to. You could live into your 80s, but in what shape are you going to be? Are you really going to thrive, or are you just going to survive? So that's what I find is really important in the mindset. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think that it really helped in my case too to be skeptical and to doubt everything because I'm a natural skeptic and I'm a researcher and I want to know why. I don't just take it at face value. So when my doctor told me, you have MS, here, take these really dangerous black box
Uh,
medication where the side effect is death, and we'll see you in a year, hope for the best, keep benefits, you're going to be in a wheelchair. And I was like, no. And the only good thing about being in Canada, because we have 18 months it took from my MRI to my first appointment, and I'd already kind of realized MS was a possibility because of a optometrist looking at my optic neuritis in my eye. And so I had this time to research, and I didn't just do Dr. Google, that's worst case scenarios. I started looking at who healed themselves, who did well, what is this other potential, what are the other methods. So when I came there, I this is when I first asked about diet and other things and got laughed off. But I knew that you could cure lesions in the brain. So I told the doctor, I'm going to cure myself. And he laughed. He said, it's not curable, it's progressive. You can't cure it. And I was like, well, there are people who never get new lesions. He's like, yes, some people never have another relapse. And I'm like, and some people show on MRI that their lesions shrink and go away. He's like, yes, that can happen. I'm like, I can cure it. And he laughed again. He's like, no, it's not curable. And I'm like, no, if you cannot get a new lesion and you can shrink them, that's a cure. I'm going to believe that. Never mind. You just told me I'm going to be in a wheelchair. And on my 10-year anniversary, I did a triathlon for the first time instead of being in a wheelchair. And so the mindset is critically important. And also being skeptical and looking for other alternatives because some of the alternatives, and I've done lots of them, some worked really well and some didn't work. But the thing about it is, they didn't have the side effect of you could die, get an infection, you could get another disease, you could, all the things that when you go to the pharmaceutical route, you have all of these. Maybe the drugs work, sometimes they probably do work, but with what negative downstream? Where all of these alternative things, the worst thing that happened in some cases is it didn't do much. Right. And I'm like, well, that's not that big of a deal. You just chalk that one up. You don't get defeated about it. You're just like, okay, well, that door is going to close. I'm not going to get hung up on that. I'm going to open another door and be curious because something you're going to do is eventually going to change the needle. And it looks like for you, you found all kinds of things that have helped because you're making a really critical point here about that you're not just 84 and just making through another day with your pain and your achy bones and, pulling yourself through the day. You're doing well still. And that makes all the difference. And I think that if people could already start to implement that now, they could have a different vision for themselves in the future. But if people are already feeling this sick in their 40s, or even unfortunately now for kids and teenagers that are getting sick, the future starts to look a little less bright for you if you're already so sick. So With the diet, is there any other things that you add on other than diet? I know you're mentioning mindset now.
Yeah, it was really interesting because uh, when I wrote my first book, The Thriving Vegan, that was in 2019, just before the pandemic hit. It was 95% was eating plant-based foods. And that was it. And this doctors, my favorite doctors are just strictly, well, not strictly, but 90% is, plant-based foods, whether it's Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. McDougall, who passed away a couple of years ago, Dr. Michael Greger. There's several of them who I follow. But what happened to me recently is that I started doing research in other areas, other lifestyle practices. And actually started out with the blue zones because I really got interested in the blue zones and what they follow because they have their lifestyle practices. And, it's, well, most of plant-based nutrition, staying active, exercising, being part of a caring community is very important. Having purpose in your life, really important. So that was something that, okay, I took that on. But recently, and this is because of my son, who I actually dedicated this book to. He doesn't know that yet. I'm going to tell him later today. But uh, he's a somatic healer, and he started getting into whole new things. And I at first was like, I don't know if I want to get into breath work and intermittent fasting and hot and cold therapy. And but you know what? I guess it's because my whole mindset is that, well, I'm going to try to do anything that keeps me going because I'm 84, and even though even if I live to 100, it's not that long from now. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like each day is so important to me, and that's one of the things that can be really really important. It can be really a wisdom is if you start realizing that every moment is so important because you don't have that moment. If you're in your 40s and your 50s, oh, I got decades to live. You don't even think that much about your health, unfortunately. But when you get in your 80s, I play a lot of pickleball, 3 or 4 times a week. I love pickleball. So we have a pickleball community of expats here in San Miguel. So I'm always interested in little short-term stress, which is very good for resilience. Helps us deal with chronic stress. So I do, and I research it, whatever it is. Okay, what the intermittent fasting is, good for healing the cells. Cells can repair themselves, and breath holds. I became so into breath holds every morning. My wife too, and it's really the energy you get from that, and is I don't know, just these things, and I'm doing them, and if it works for me, I'm going to continue, and I'm open to anything that goes, because one of the problems when you get older for a lot of people is fatigue. You don't have that much energy when you get into your 80s. So what do I need to do for that? And I started doing research on that. So that's what I'm doing, because, and the other thing is that if I'm promoting this and I write a book about it, and all of a sudden I'm not living that experience anymore, that's bad for my brand. So I got to keep on going no matter what. But I'm enjoying it because I'm experiencing a lot of joy. Meditation is so important, for the stress, and yeah, it's really great.
So I followed a journey that I started in the physical body with my own healing. So it was very much about diet, yoga, and I was still a runner then too. Everything was still a lot of supplements, and everything was still in the body range. And as I realized I hit a plateau on my healing because I was quite sick, I got into energy medicine next. So it was things like microcurrents and light therapy and pulse magnetic field therapy. And then even some of the things you're talking now about, like hormetic stress. So I really don't like the cold. I do the cold exposure because I make
I
myself.
don't either.
No, I don't like it though. But I love hypoxic breathing too. Love it. I love that pause when you're holding your breath and you're not even
Wow.
breathing. How still everything gets. It's amazing. I love Wim Hof says it getting high on your own supply, and I'm like, that's what it feels like. It really is. And fasting I came across because they actually do a lot of studies with MS and fasting. And they found that if you did, they have a 5-2 fasting for MS, where 5 days a week you eat normal, and then 2 days you eat under 500 calories. I find it difficult to eat a little bit in a day and then not keep eating. So I started doing like intermittent fasting. So I do 16 hours, usually 18
Wow, it's
sometimes.
good.
So it's like just like a snack and a meal in a day. But I've done two 5-day water fasts. And the water fast, I wouldn't suggest that anyone who hasn't done fasting, because you need to kind of build up your tolerance. It can be too stressful if you haven't learned how to go into ketosis. But I'd already fasted, intermittent for years. The 5-day fast, it's kind of, you get like that same feeling when you do the hypoxic breathing and you go really inwards. Day 3 is a little bit hard, but once you get to day 4 and 5, you don't even want to eat anymore. Like your relationship with food changes. My eyesight would get so clear, my mental focus was sharp, but your energy wanes. Like you wouldn't want to do it and have to go to a job or do something physical. Like you
Uh,
definitely, your mind is sharper, but your energy, your calories are reduced. But it is beneficial. And they say with MS or any immune disease, if you do 5 days fasting and you do that once a month, 3 months in a row, it is enough to build an entirely new immune system. So that dysregulation in the immune system completely disappears because it's enough autophagy and rebuilding. So, I mean, it's amazing how some of these things are free and simple and you can implement at home and they can be that profound, but nobody talks about them. Right. So I'm glad that you're writing books. I'm glad you made it a mission to talk to people about this, because these small little things like hypoxic breathing can really change your life. And, you don't need any fancy coach, and you don't need, to go and sign up for a program somewhere. You could really just do these things implemented on your own starting today, and they have a big impact. So I wanted to ask you a question because the diet has been a tricky spot for me. I was a vegetarian for 12 years when I was younger. I really didn't like meat when I was young. And then I went through a period where it was like a protest against eating animals because I loved animals. And I wouldn't call myself a vegetarian. I call it a starchitarian because I didn't eat meat, but I also didn't eat vegetables. I was so unhealthy, right? I was living on caffeine, nicotine, sugar, pop, starchy foods. And so I can't say that I gave being a vegetarian a good try because obviously I didn't do it in any healthy way. But I think that contributed in some way to later developing MS, because in the MS protocol diets, they talk about like you're supposed to eat 9 cups of vegetables a day. So it's really heavily, lots of vegetables, but adding in organ meat and high quality pasture raised meat and intentional fat products, because your myelin needs fat to regenerate. So after years of not eating meat, I started eating meat again, but I made the condition that I only eat pasture raised animals where I've been to the farm, and that I see that they have a nice life and that they're outside and they get to stay with their babies and eat grass, because I feel like at least then I'm eating an energetically happy animal. So hopefully as I'm eating it, it's not as harmful to me. But I have added meat back in and I've seen some benefits from that. But I think that one of the things that, whether we're talking about being vegetarian, vegan, because I don't do dairy, so I took that out. But
yeah.
even the way I'm eating now, or this anti-inflammatory diet, one major thing is evident in all of these diets. No fast food, no processed food, no highly refined sugars, right? Like you're taking out like the very worst offenders of the standard American diet. So for most people starting with that terrible diet, regardless of what version, whether it's keto, Mediterranean, vegetarian, you've already improved by eating whole foods so much better that you're probably likely to see the health benefits. And I'm wondering, once I get my MS stabilized, maybe going back to vegetarian, but what do you do in particular to be a vegetarian and still make sure that you get the right kind of protein and fat content in your diet?
Well, first of all, I'm not a I'm plant based because vegetarian would still consume dairy and eggs.
Mhm.
So vegetarian. So I'm plant that. That's what I've been for almost 18 years now. Uh, that's the big question. Is I still get asked that question. Where do you get the protein from? So the protein, I guess my first answer is I get my protein from the same place that some of the strongest animals in the world get their protein, whether it's the elephant, the gorilla, the water buffalo, the horse, Even in the prehistoric days, the Brontosaurus, they ate the leaves off of trees because all protein initially comes from the ground. So for me, it's like, well, if you say, well, I don't want to eat grass. Well, you don't have to eat grass. There's a lot of things, but if you go through and you look at the different plants, the vegetables, you get everything. You don't need, if you're a special, training for sports or something, you may need without even getting into animal products, because there are lots of elite vegan athletes in the world. Djokovic was considered one maybe the greatest tennis player of all time. The Williams sisters also, Kyrie Irving, basketball player. In all sports, you have elite vegan athletes. In fact, there's a very popular what is it called? The Game Changers. I don't know if you've seen that on Netflix. It's
No.
on Netflix. It's a documentary. It was produced by James Cameron of the Avatar of the Titanic. The producer. He's plant based. So he did that. Did that with a director who won an Academy Award for previously. So it's been on for the last 3-4 years on Netflix, and it goes through the whole thing. It compares, elite athletes and why, in fact, the athletes do better on vegan diets because you have a faster recovery time, and long-term health is also better for vegan athletes if you eat correctly, because you have to eat a lot of variety if you want to get the all of the benefits of plant-based. It's important to eat variety. That's why you're saying like you have to eat so many different vegetables, right? Because it's not the thing with meat is that it's a whole protein meat, whereas with you have tofu or soy, but combining it, you will get everything you need. I do it. In 18 years, I play pickleball at a level of kids in there. I call them kids, 40s and 50s, and I'm not, I'm as good as they are. So, and I know other vegan athletes. Then you have Tom Brady. I mean, you can go through a whole list. You could check out elite vegan athletes online. You'll see what it is. But I don't. The interesting thing with me is because the reason I mentioned this book I wrote in 2019. This book is not the same book. This book combines different lifestyle practices and what I'm learning from it and what it means for me. So I would say instead of like 90 percent plant-based, to me it is a non-negotiable. You need at least 70% in order to thrive in your 80s and 90s. You could survive. Anybody could survive. But if you want to thrive, you need that. And the main reason is the fiber. Fiber is the favorite food of the gut bacteria. That is what helps the bacteria or the bugs in our gut keep us healthy, with stronger immune system, help us avoid chronic inflammation. Because so many people you get colon cancer is every year it gets younger and younger people are getting colon cancer. Because we're not giving the fiber to and the fiber comes from from plants. So for me, I don't say don't eat meat, don't eat more fiber. So
Yeah,
that's what
this is
yeah. Okay.
that's like in the Walls protocol, which a lot of the MS people will follow. It's that 9 cups of vegetable is the first thing to do. So before even making the other changes, it's getting that large amount. And one of the things I found, like when I used to eat what a lot of starch foods and processed foods, you get that like glycemic index and the crashing out because you're getting this quick fix of sugar from even if it's just the refined wheat and the processed foods, and then you're hungry again right away, but you're also like nutrient starved. So your body is actually sending you hunger signals because you never actually fed it. You just gave it empty
Right.
calories, right? So once I started
Yeah.
actually eating this way, I really stopped craving a lot of the other things I thought I was going to miss. So for people that are looking to implement this, the suggestion I always give is don't worry about trying to get rid of the chips and the bread first. you try to eat the 9 cups of vegetables because I'll tell you, if you get the 9 cups in, you're going to be so full and you're going to have so much fiber in your body and you're going to have such a hard time even consuming that. But you're going to feel like the nutrients, like you're going to be fed. Your cells are going to get what they need, and you won't actually crave the other things so bad. It's much easier to give up the other things if you start by actually adding things in before you even take things out. And at least that's what I found, that my body feels fed now. And I think that's why it was easy to go to 1 meal a day for me. The only thing about the 1 meal a day I have a hard time doing now is how do I, in one plate of food, if I'm only eating that one time, get 9 cups of vegetables and the fat and all the
Uh,
protein? It becomes like, because I only weigh 105 pounds, I'm not very big. To me, to eat this amount of food is difficult just to begin with. So I don't know. I think that the idea that I'm stable in my weight now and in my energy level means I've probably got some kind of balance struck. But I still struggle with the MS and a bit of the information on the diet because, yes, you're supposed to eat the meat, but meat is also inflammatory, right? It is like a carcinogenic in the
yeah.
body. So at the same time that, yes, it's giving us the fat and the protein that maybe our brain is looking for to repair itself, we're then getting slow gut motility because it's taking longer to move through. And for MS, gut motility is a big issue for a lot of us, right? It's very slow moving and you're kind of retoxifying yourself if that meat is sitting in there, turning acidic for long periods of time. So, I think it's an interesting thing and it gets very difficult. I know I talk to a lot of people about diet because there's a lot of like cultural norms around food and a lot of societal pressure. And it's already difficult when you have such an influence around you of how everybody else is eating and going to a restaurant and all these things. And the more food restrictions we kind of give ourselves, the more the relationship with food becomes less pleasant. And then is our nervous system really digesting the food right if we're like, micromanaging every bite of food that's coming in? So, do you have any suggestions on that, on how do people just kind of make like peace a little bit with the food and the relationship with eating?
Yeah, well, I wrote, try to put out an article on my Substack every week or every 10 days. And the one I just came out, the previous one, was the myth of everybody is different. And I was talking to somebody about that. Actually, it was a last podcast. And that's what that's the latest thing. Everybody is different, meaning that there's no one diet, there's no one. So, but that's okay. If you're really into health and you're really focused on being healthy, that's okay. You can find out, because we have differences. But if you're just using that everyone is different to say, well, everyone is different, I'll just do what I'm doing. And that's the problem. And I think that we can't get caught up in that because there are certain things that are basic. We have to eat a certain way. We can't just do anything we want because, and eventually, some people say, oh, I just eat meat. I eat 90% of what I eat is meat. Well, how old are you? Well, I'm 50 some. Okay, wait till you get 80 and see how you feel then. So I'm talking about being thriving in the later years because even I have a beef also with the keto diet, even though, I once in a while is okay, or intermittent fasting when it switches over to ketosis. But the keto diet as a fundamental thing is, throughout our millions of years of existence, ever since the apes, we've been carbohydrates people. We've been animals on carbohydrates. That is the number one. And keto has always been, the fats were burned when we didn't have it in certain situations. We needed something to live on. So carbohydrates is a nutrition dense. It is calorie light, fat light, and but the most popular diet right now in the U.S. is the keto diet. But that you look over the years, and we've been ever since I was in my 50s. It's always been the standard American diet. It's always been the basics have been meat, dairy, and eggs, some fruits and vegetables. We've gone through this from the basic seven in the 50s. And even though the names have changed, you get to the South Beach diet. Yeah, they're just going through different diets. We haven't been able to get off of this and part of it is because of the industries, the agricultural industry, the dairy industry. They're the bottom line is what they thrive on. They're investors, they're stockholders. So they put out a lot of information and we get stuck on the information. Today is the information world with so much information that people get confused. And I remember listening or reading about this, one of the heads of the dairy industry, he was saying, or the president, this is years ago, he was saying that it doesn't matter if people, if we don't, don't believe what we're saying, about dairy. The only important thing is that people stay confused, because when you stay confused, you don't change. And I think that's what the world is today, is like, there's so much information out there, but we have to become more responsible and realize that we need to take on the responsibility of our own health and not leave it up to other people, to doctors, to, we have to really, that's what it needs to change. That's one of the mindsets we have to have, is that we are responsible for our health. And it's very important, the lifestyle, especially when you get older, lifestyle, and you probably realize this too, lifestyle is more important than the medicines, because with lifestyles, we take responsibility and we learn about new ways of living and what we need to do to treat the problems we have with health. Yeah.
So I talk about in my book, because I'm not a nutritionist and I have no background in really giving recommendations. So I just say a general, just rule of thumb for me is eat whole foods and just take away the worst offenders, because whatever diet you're looking at, they all share some similar things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we talked about that, like no fast food, no processed foods, right? No things that you can't even pronounce it, no food color dyes, and these
Yeah.
worst offenders. And probably just that is going to be better than all the misinformation. And there is a ton of it, and it is on purpose. And it's not even just with, I mean, the gaslighting isn't just with the food. It's like, even when you look at the pharmaceutical companies who have even more lobbying power, I would say, than the food industry does,
Yeah.
they'll give you those ads where it's like, oh, do you get a headache? Here, take this pill. It will give you cancer, and you lose your eyesight and all these terrible things, but you won't have a headache. And it's like, well, that is awfully confusing too. Like, what kind of symptoms are we trying to manage even here? But I think that the personal responsibility is huge. And I think it is maybe the only reason I give the doctors a bit of a pass sometimes, because otherwise I've actually been pretty disappointed in my own experience with the medical field and how they've treated people I know, and a lot of the clients that come to see me, because nobody comes to see somebody for energy medicine as a first stop. I usually see people after they've done everything else and been failed by a lot of things. But one thing I'll say about the medical profession is, yes, they're just not trained for it, to do nutrition, but also clients are not that compliant. So how you had this push towards like optimizing your health and longevity and how can I be my best personal growth mindset, I have that too. And when people have that, they can move towards the thing they want. But for a lot of people, they like the doctor because they have no responsibility. They think, I'm just going to come here. I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to address anything. Give me a pill, fix me. I'm going to go home and continue to drink beer, smoke, and, eat fast food. And I even see people in my own profession when they're coming now to see me too. They think if I do an energy treatment that, oh, that's going to be a miraculous cure too. And I'm like,
Uh,
no, I can put energy back into your body. I can use a device to make your energy blueprint more coherent. But if you leave here and you fight with your spouse on the way and then you stop at McDonald's, everything that we just did in our session, it's not going to hold, right? Like at some point, we have to be responsible for things ourselves. And I think that that is lacking in a lot of people, which is, and we see that in the world. It's not even just in the medical system, but I think
right.
even in the way our governments work in general, the fact that we really give over our autonomy and our sovereignty so quickly to the white coats and to the people that are in authority to say, I won't be responsible. You tell me what to do, and you fix me, and it'll be your fault if things don't work out right. And we don't really have that luxury, right? Like at the end of the day, we're the only people that are going to advocate for ourselves. We know our bodies, we know what we need, and we unfortunately we have to do the work. Um, so you said that you've written a new book as well too. Is this like going down a new stream and a new direction, or where you're still saying in this overarching of longevity?
No, it's basically longevity. It's the Yeah, the longevity wellness revolution. So it's a whole new way of thinking about longevity. And that's why I call it the fifth stage, which is from 80 to 100 and beyond. In other words, we can really thrive during the later years and not just survive. So we had go through these stages, and the fourth stage is you from 40, not from 40, from 60 to 79. We're retiring, and so many people that retire that they say, "Well, I'm gonna retire, and I'm just gonna hang out, and I'm just gonna relax, and I'm not gonna do. I'm tired of working." And the whole idea is that if you really want to thrive, you got to do the exact opposite. You have to take life by the horns. You have to, because that's what they do in the blue zones. They're active. Even they don't, they work even in their 100, we're over 100 because that's what they're the healthiest and longest living people. And it's about doing the opposite of what people think. You don't have to work anymore. So, okay, I'm not going to work anymore. And you don't have a purpose anymore. You don't have meaning in your life. So everything goes downhill from there. Because how do we see older people? Well, they don't have much to contribute, or will they go into a home, or into a living experience, and they're put into a home by the children, or they're just sitting around not having any real meaning in their life. So this is the whole idea, is changing that, and that's the mindset. That's the way of looking at it. And if you want to enjoy, this is what the book is about. And I go through it, and I've come up with the latest thing, which is my course also that I'm working on, is the 7 pillars of the fifth stage longevity wellness. And I go through the different things, whether it's, the 7 stages are metabolic wellness, strength, resilience. So I go through different things, much more than just nutrition. And in other words, I try to include everything that's part of health in these 7 pillars. So, and how to, how to mitigate stress, and so many things. We have stress in our lives, more stress now than probably ever before. So these are things, and I try to deal with this because it's not only one thing. And that's what I think I've learned since the first book I wrote, that it's not only one thing, nutrition. It's what else can we do in our life? And I think today there is more being written about longevity, and it's being spoken about. There are courses, there are summits given on longevity. Is like a extremely popular topic now, which is fantastic. But I go into it, and sometimes, hey, you should go into that summit that's on longevity. And I look at the 20 people that are talking about it, and they're all in their 50s and 60s, and say, wait a second, I should be on that summit because I'm experiencing that. How do you know it works? What about your experience in longevity? So that's what I see myself as, having that little bit added thing, is that I'm living it. I'm putting it into practice, and I'm living it, and I'm talking about it, and I'm writing about it.
That's amazing. And I do think that it adds value to it too, because when I speak to my audience about MS topics, I'm coming not as now just a clinician and as a practitioner. I was a patient too. And, I'm still struggling. Like the MS, I don't think it's 100% resolved, or, it still flares sometimes. And I'm still walking the walk with people as I'm trying to help them get through their navigation too. And you are an inspiration. And I think I want to just say that to people here too, that don't understand the correlation maybe between longevity and your health right now. Even if you're listening to this and you're in your 20s or in your 40s, every piece of advice given here not only is going to help you to overcome your conditions and better your energy and vitality in the moment. I want to be in your shoes. I don't want to just be recovering from my MS. I want to be grandma who's still skiing on the hills with my grandkids. I want to still, I want all of these things for myself, and I actually know I'm going to have it, but I have to, my future self wants me to be here talking to you right now and learning from you so that my future self can have the version that you're living right now. So,
I wanted to mention one thing that what you had mentioned, that for younger people, it's really important to understand that cancer, many chronic diseases don't start in the old age. This starts when you're younger. And because when you're younger, I went through this, you think you're going to live forever. That, yeah, okay, when I'm 60, I'll start dealing with the chronic disease. My father, he was during the war, World War II. He didn't go to war because he had two sons, but he was a painter on the hull of the ships, and he was exposed to asbestos at that time. They didn't know asbestos was cancer causing. He lived till 78. So it took 40 years. So people, when you go to get a mammogram for women, you say, oh, early detection. No, it's not early detection. It so happens that it reached the size where the machine picked it up. It could be decades that this thing developed, the cancer developed. Same thing with heart disease, same thing with the type 2 diabetes. So it's really important to understand it starts when you're younger. Don't fool yourself in thinking that you're okay. I'm great, great, great now. Yeah, you're okay because you're young. But this thing gradually gets to the point, your diseases, they develop through your life. And that's why it's important. You're never too young to start thinking about your health.
That's really fantastic advice, and I really echo that message that you're sharing. So I'm going to make sure that your books and is there like a way for people to find out about your course in the future too? Is there a website or somewhere where people can go for when that's ready to roll? Or we'll have you
Yeah.
back on maybe when your course
No,
comes out.
well, that would be great too. But I
Yeah.
have a website is longevitywellnessrevolution.com, which
Okay.
is that's my website. I also have a Substack, which I put articles out every week or 10 days. And I'm on a whole bunch of podcasts. I just love being a guest on podcasts because I just love to talk, so I'll
Well,
send
you
you
have
the
a
information. Yeah, also have a guidebook for people who maybe you don't feel ready to buy my book. So I have a guidebook that's free that I'll give you the way, there's a QR code that people can download it free. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I keep all of that in the show notes below so people have an easy way to access all of your work and your depth of knowledge that you provide and your message of inspiration and your living example that we should all hope to be so lucky that we're in your shoes at 84. So I want to thank you so much, Michael, for being on the show today.
And you're a living example as well. You know that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank
so,
you.
for the audience, I hope that today really resonated with you. And if it did, I hope that you'll consider subscribing, sharing to somebody else who needs this. And I think that the message I really got out of today, too, is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, if you're still young and you're still vital, why not maintain it? Start making the decisions now. Be curious, be questioning. Don't believe everything that's said. And know that there is all these alternative options that are available for your healing. And that healing will happen and become inevitable if you feed the body right and you nourish your mind and that you give yourself all of the lifestyle options that are available to you to optimize your wellness so that we can all hopefully be still here, still chatting when we're 84 as well too. So stay curious, stay healthy, have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste. If you've been listening and thinking, I've tried everything, but something is still missing, then you are not alone. This is where I was with my MS and what led me to write my book, Unlearn Disease, Relearn Wellbeing. In this book, I break down how you too can rewire your nervous system, revitalize your energy, and work with all layers of your being to bring resolution and holistic healing. This is a great starting point for your journey. Find it in the show notes below. Thank you for listening to Mind Over MS. For more episodes, guided meditations, and healing resources, follow Energy Over Matter and subscribe wherever you are listening. Until next time, this is Dana Wilder signing off. Have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste.